Most agencies are invisible, and it's your fault. If your positioning is broken, your website forgettable, and your marketing says nothing, you're out before the game starts. The shortlist isn't random, it's earned. That's a quote from Steve Boehler and a sneak peek at today's episode. Hi there, I'm Kerry Curran, B2B Revenue Growth Executive Advisor, Industry Analyst, and host of Revenue Boost, a marketing podcast. Every episode, I sit down with top experts to bring you actionable strategies that drive real results. If you're serious about business growth, hit subscribe and stay ahead of your competition today. In Your Agency Growth Strategy is Broken and How to Pivot Now to Stand Out and Get Shortlisted, I sit down with Steve Boehler. He's the partner at Mercer Island Group. We unpack why so many agencies are struggling to grow and what to do about it. From pitch readiness and positioning clarity to building real visibility with buyers, this episode is packed with insights agency leaders need now. Be sure to stay tuned to the end where Steve shares one of the critical shifts every agency must make today to win more business in 2025 and beyond. Let's go. So welcome, Stephen. Please introduce yourself and share your background and expertise.
Hi, Kerry. I am thrilled to be here. My name is Steve Boehler. I am one of the partners at Mercer Island Group. We're a marketing management consulting firm. We help marketers and their agencies succeed. It's about as simple as that. So on the marketing side, we help them with their workflows, their structure, how they go to market, how they manage their agencies. We help train them in briefing better and how to evaluate creative and how to evaluate media plans. And because of that, and by the way, we do a lot of agency reviews as part of that work. So we're probably in the top 5 in market share in agency reviews in the US. Because of all of that work, about, 10 or 15 years ago, we decided that we should, it was really sad to see so many fine agencies lose pitches that they shouldn't lose. Mm-hmm. And so we also began counseling agencies, of course, not the ones in our reviews, on how to position themselves better, how to go to market better, how to win more pitches, how to build their reputation, et cetera, how to do better strategic work, et cetera, et cetera. And it's such a great space, and it relates dearly to my background. In many ways, because I grew up at Procter & Gamble in brand management. I was there for a decade, and everything from Jif and Duncan Hines and Pringles to Tide. And I dearly, when I started the consultancy, I dearly missed the agency part of the world. And so this brings us all full circle.
Excellent. Well, I'm very excited for our conversation today. I think we've led kind of parallel paths. I grew up in the agency world, and P&G was one of my first clients doing their search marketing. And but I was on the business development side on the agencies for so long that we've kind of been seeing two different ends of the business. So I'm excited to dive in. So we've talked a bit about you talked about you coach a lot of agencies and what they need to do to improve. Like, what are the common challenges they come to you with?
At the simplest level, almost all agencies want more at-bats, and then they want to win more of those at-bats that they get. Now, underneath the surface, most agencies have challenges that need to be addressed that are really the cause of all of that. And so it's not as simple as us waving a magic wand and all of a sudden they're going to have more at-bats. The more at-bats thing, it really takes a coherent effort to treat your agency like a brand, if you want to get those at-bats. I'm stealing that from Mischief's Oliver McAteer's his quote about agencies need to act like brands, and I believe that completely. And they don't for the most part. They are the shoemaker's children,
Yeah.
right? And so there's a lot that agencies should be doing that they aren't doing. And if they're doing those things for themselves, the way they do it for their clients, they would
Hmm.
be far more prosperous.
Yeah, nope. I can definitely relate to that. We always kind of used to joke that we were the cobbler's children, and it's a challenge because you do it very well for your clients, and you don't necessarily do it well for yourselves. And you were talking about like when brands are hire you to make a short list, like what do they have an idea of who they want to bring, or kind of what happens there when they are asked who they should be including?
That is such a good question, and the sad. So everybody that works in an agency, please plug your ears for a minute, because the truth of the matter is that marketing executives have a very low unaided awareness of agency brand names,
Hmm.
very low,
Yeah.
unaided. If you show them a list, they'll be able to check a few boxes
Yeah.
and recognize a few agency names. If the marketing executive used to work in an agency, they'll know a few more.
Yeah.
And I'm not really talking about Mark Pritchard
Yeah.
or the similar like top 5 to 10 marketers in the
Mhm.
world that interact with agencies, because those folks make it their business, right?
Yeah.
But for the most part, marketers aren't going around thinking about agencies,
Mhm.
and so that means uh, that you start in a sort of a hole as an agency if you're waiting around to be invited to a review,
Yeah. Yeah.
because you're not going to get the call for the most part. Now,
Mhm.
giant agencies start with a natural advantage in that they are touching more people. The name
Mhm.
is bigger. It shows up more often just
Yeah.
by virtue of its scale and the amount of clients they work with, the amount of work they produce. So the big agencies get more inbound traffic than little
Mhm.
agencies,
Yeah.
but they still don't, frankly, get as much as they'd really like, or the kind they
Mhm.
really like.
Right.
And the truth is, I think at its core, most agency folks have a very little understanding of what that buyer journey is like for their
Right.
services.
Mhm.
I think we may be the only consultant that's ever studied this, but so we've taken a hard look at what is that journey like, in order so that we can help agencies better understand what's happening behind the scenes over there, right?
Right.
What's really happening in marketing land, because knowing that helps you define as an agency where do I put my investment? How do I
Right.
go to market in a way that gets me my name out there a little more and increases the odds that I'll be on that list? And everybody wants to be on the list because the list is the at bats.
Mhm. No, I see that firsthand because I work with a lot of agencies that have just gone from referral growth to try to help them build the growth
Hmm.
infrastructure. And um, I've been bringing in some of the strategies that have been working more for B2B SaaS because I know that I ask
Hmm.
agencies, who's your ideal customer profile? They don't have one. They say, oh, we'll sell to anyone, or, what's your unique value proposition, or how are you different than all the other agencies? And very few can really articulate that. And I think to your point, like that's a challenge. And so what you've studied the kind of the brand buyer, the agency
Sure.
buyer, what does that customer journey look like?
That's yeah. So most of a marketer's life
Hmm.
has nothing to do with selecting an agency,
Yep.
and that's
Yeah.
the starting point. So, if probably close to 97% of their time has nothing to do with
Hmm.
thinking about
Yeah.
the next agency,
Yeah.
and so what that means is that if think about when you're at home and somebody calls and this says, "Hey, I'm going to be in your neighborhood, cleaning your neighbor's gutters. Would you like your gutters cleaned?" Or, "Hey, I'm going to be doing some tree maintenance down the street from
Hmm.
you." You only keep talking to that person if it's a problem.
Right. Right.
right? You don't engage if you had your gutters cleaned yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to engage. You're not going
Right.
to think
Right.
about it. And
Yeah.
so this is how marketers' lives are. Marketers are those folks that just had their gutters cleaned.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
agencies are out there screaming about, we can clean your gutters.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And
Yeah.
so thinking about that, the fact that most of the marketer's existence happens largely off camera to the agencies.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what so it's key to understand what they're doing. What they are doing is they're focused on their job, they're focused on their business, the industry they're competing in, and probably getting promoted.
Yep. Yeah.
So agencies that can be interesting and helpful in
Mm-hmm.
ways that help them with their job, help them with their function, help them in their industry compete better, maybe
Mm-hmm.
help get them promoted.
Yep.
That kind of information and content might be read and observed, or a video looked at by the marketers.
Mm-hmm.
And so the key is, as Bruce Springsteen, frankly, was there's a Bruce Springsteen story here somewhere. Uh, as Jimmy Iovine was once told by John Landau. So Jimmy Iovine was early in his career was a technician in production. John Landau, of course, was Bruce Springsteen's manager, and Jimmy Iovine had this problem. Bruce kept asking him to nail a really specific drum beat, and Jimmy kept coming back with this version and that version, and another version, and it went on for weeks, and nothing met Bruce's approval. And so young Jimmy Iovine, who nobody had ever heard of, went to Landau and said, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to quit. And Landau gave the best advice ever for agencies and new business to Jimmy Iovine. He said, Jimmy, it's not about you. It's about
Mm-hmm.
him and helping him succeed. So you go
Yep.
back there and you tell Bruce, you are in it. You're going to do everything in your power to help get this drum beat,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll make a friend for life. Jimmy did it. He never nailed the drum beat. But a few weeks later, Bruce called him and said, listen, I've got this song that I'm giving to Patti Smith, and I'd like you to produce it. And so it becomes a giant hit for Patti Smith. And Jimmy Iovine moves from being the technician that couldn't nail the drum beat
Mm-hmm.
to a billionaire eventually.
Yeah.
And the message is, it's not about you. And so agencies, when they're out
Mm-hmm.
talking about themselves and beating their
Yeah.
chest about, we won this business, or we have this new technique, or we hired this new person,
Mm-hmm.
nobody cares.
Yeah. Yeah.
What they care about is the clients care about their own jobs, their own industry, their own brand, getting
Mm-hmm.
promoted. And
Yeah.
so if you can help me, if I'm convinced that you can help me with that, I'll pay attention. And if
Yeah.
I pay
Yeah.
attention enough times in that moment when I need an agency, you're probably going to be one of the few I think of. Or you're going to be one of the few when I phone a friend, which happens,
Yes. Yeah.
that I hear about. Or when I go to Google, which really happens, when
Mm-hmm.
I'm kicking off my agency search, I
Yeah.
actually go and search on Google. I put in the right keywords, I'm going to find out that your agency happens to have this deep expertise in the thing I need,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
because your content has been so well covered, so well amplified. And so bringing it all back to ground zero, agencies really need to recognize it's not about me as an agency.
Right.
It's about them and their
Mm-hmm.
challenges. And for us to be helpful and noticed, we have to do things that are noticeable, that people are
Mm-hmm.
going to pay attention to. And it's not the latest 30-second spot I created.
Yeah. 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 It's everything you're saying is so spot on. And I love that story because it's what we're seeing, again, bringing it back to where the B2B companies, the SaaS, the tech, they have already, or they're starting to realize that you're not creating content around your product features. You're creating content around what you're solving, what
Mhm.
you're, how the outcomes you bring for them, or how you help them be better at your job. So it's the agencies need to get smarter and to adopt some of those strategies that are really starting to work. All of it needs to be all B2B marketing, which what the agencies really need to,
Mhm.
the hat they need to
That's
be
right.
wearing
That's
is
right.
needs to be more customer centric. And so you talked about having a ways to really stand out, like you said, if to demonstrate that you are the best future partner for that brand to get their business goals. So talk about kind of the strategies around that differentiation and having that POV.
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's really three steps we believe that agencies need to take when they are trying to market themselves and standing
Hmm.
out. They need to be ready.
Yeah.
I'll talk about that in a moment. So that's so
Hmm.
that when somebody finds them, it's
Yeah.
a good connection. They need to be memorable.
Hmm.
We'll talk about what that is, and then they need to be findable in the
Yeah.
moment. Okay, so going back to that 97% of the marketer's time is not spent looking for an agency. When they You're not going to know when they're looking for an agency,
Right.
right? Most of the B2B buying decision.
Hmm.
This is what this is. If I'm going to hire an
Yeah.
agency, that's a B2B buying decision.
Yeah.
70% of the work I put in is going to be completed by the time an agency that's being considered knows they're being considered.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll have already been to the website multiple times.
Hmm.
We'll have checked out credentials without them knowing it, et cetera, right? And so that the readiness part means that without knowing they're looking at us, we have to be perfect,
Yeah.
right? So we have to be all dressed up for the ball without a mirror, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Hmm.
part of that is so the position you really need to have a distinctive positioning that
Hmm.
makes
Yeah.
sense, that sounds like something that is interesting enough to what the client's business issues are, that they're
Hmm.
willing to keep reading or looking, right? Part of that is to have a very clear frame of reference. And this is something agencies are horrible at. And by frame of reference, what I mean is what kind of agency are you? Are you a
Right.
media
Right.
agency? Are you a creative agency? Are you a PR agency? Are you a performance marketing shop? And
Hmm.
that, whatever that thing is, needs to be on your homepage above the fold,
Yep.
readily visible somewhere. And that's important because when the client is out there, prospects out there looking for, thinking about agencies, they think about a kind of agency. And so think about the if there was an agency grocery store and there are different aisles.
Yep.
If they're looking for a media agency, they're going to go down the media agency aisle,
Hmm.
right? And but if your website above the fold doesn't proclaim that you're a media agency,
Right.
remember they don't know anything about agencies. They don't know the agency names. They're not wedded to anybody. If they can't figure it out really fast, they're moving on.
Hmm.
Okay. And so part of being ready is that having a clear frame of reference and being distinctively positioned. So when they get to your website, it looks right. It looks like, yeah,
Yep.
they're one of we'll keep them on the list for a minute, right? This the second part is having the rest of the website be so prospect friendly that in a matter of minutes they can find everything they're looking for.
Hmm.
Now, so let's go back off camera. The client, some big client needs a new agency. The CMO or the vice president of marketing calls in some middle manager and says, I've I've either had it with the existing agency or we have this new thing we're offering. We don't have the right kind of agency to support it. Go find us, go start a search for an agency. And what I need is they need to have experience in XYZ category. I
Hmm.
want them of certain size. I really want to have an office in my time zone. They can't be working with these 4 competitors, and they have to have these 5 capabilities. That's the kind of spec that the middle manager who's writing furiously gets, right? So this middle manager who knows nothing about agencies now has to go begin their search. And they have this spec list of like 5 different things on it. They will then Google, no lie, they'll phone a friend. They might find some list somewhere, maybe look into the trades, and they start crafting a list of agencies that they, for the most part, don't know much about. And then they go to the websites. The website has to be able to answer all those questions that are on that spec sheet really fast, or you get X'd off the list. So not looking for 30 agencies, they're looking for a handful that they might be able to talk to. And so that readiness piece is really important, and it's about being positioned and having a prospect-friendly website. So you have to do that stuff. Then you have to do things to be memorable. You have to do things to be findable. The memorability piece is about how you get your name out there in a way that they're going to listen to you. And the findability part is all about being on the right list, getting the right awards, and doing things like the aftermath of content that's well received, the SEO implications, and eventually now the AEO implications.
Yep. Hey everyone, it's me, Kerry Curran. If you're a B2B company that sells to marketers, whether you're an agency, MarTech, or AdTech, and your revenue is either flattening, declining, or just not growing fast enough, I can help. I've spent my entire career selling, marketing, and servicing marketers, so I know firsthand the challenges they face, the buying decisions they make, and what actually moves the needle. The truth is, most marketing strategies aren't built for revenue growth, but mine are. As your fractional Chief Growth Officer, I'll bring revenue-focused marketing strategies designed specifically for selling to marketers, deep expertise in agency, MarTech, and AdTech buying behaviors, modern go-to-market strategies that include everything from brand awareness to driving loyalty and retention, and a track record of doubling and even tripling revenue for B2B companies just like yours. So if you're tired of your stagnant results and you're ready to build a marketing engine that actually drives revenue, let's talk. Visit revenuebasedmarketing.com or connect with me on LinkedIn to schedule a consultation. Together, let's build a smarter, more profitable path forward. RBMA, Revenue-Based Marketing Advisors, where revenue-based marketing that works. And you talked about, too, of creating that content around that positions your expertise. You gave the example of the Edelman's Trust Barometer and using that as cornerstone content.
Yeah,
Talk a bit more about that.
I think it's important for the marketing part, the comms work that an agency does really should flow directly from the positioning of the agency. And Edelman is maybe the greatest at doing this. So they 25 years ago or so, they figured out that the best positioning for a PR agency was earning trust through communication. That's their positioning. It's not the most creative or exciting, but it's
clear. It indicates, to your point.
It's clear, and and frankly, it's job number one for PR.
Yeah.
Right. So they nailed job number one. What they then did, though, is they brought it to life with. They're ready, by the way. If you go to their homepage and all, you're going to get all this stuff. But they bring it to life in their marketing every year with the annual Edelman Trust Barometer. And if any listener doesn't, I'm sure all the listeners know about the Trust Barometer. If not, look it up. And that's their cornerstone content. It's huge, it's global, and that huge global work gets a huge amount of attention itself. It is based on, it's the Trust Barometer. So it flows naturally from their positioning, earning trust through communications, the Trust Barometer. That huge piece of content not only has its own visibility and helps build reputation, but they then can slice and dice that down into little pieces, little cobblestones of content all throughout the year to special presentations, to webinars, into the weekly blogs, into notices on LinkedIn, to covering their podcast. And the whole thing works together from start to finish. And the thing that's really magic about it is that they're not screaming that we're the best PR agency. They're screaming about a topic that is important, whether you work in any size company, almost any job you have in that company, in any kind of organization. So from enterprise to NGOs to government, they have all of those bases covered in the trust barometer, every region of the world. And it's almost like the marketing
Super
plan writes
valuable.
itself.
Yeah, yeah,
Right? Because and by the way, they're not talking about Edelman.
yeah, right.
They know it's not
They're
about them.
providing,
It's
yeah, they're
about
providing help. Yeah.
the listener.
No, I love that. I love that example, and I think the cornerstone and the cobblestones is such a great concept. And one of the examples I always used to spearhead was a big original research paper each year that would dive into challenges or pain points of our target
Mm-hmm.
clients, brands, and the goal was always that they would read it, say, "Wow, we need to be doing this, and we need to be calling, my agency to help them." And to write, it gave us keynotes, press interviews, articles, and it's such a smart strategy that you really don't see a lot of agencies taking that strategic approach. One question I wanted to kind of dive into was, we're seeing a lot of, you can't go anywhere without the news around the holding company changes, but then there are so many independent agencies. You mentioned you did a speed dating with agencies that had 26 agencies, I think. So, like, talk about what do you see as the future, or what are brands thinking about when it comes to, do I choose an independent agency or a holding company agency, and what do you think that's going to look like in the next few years?
Well, I think there'll be a lot of both, but I think like there is now, but I think the way to think about the marketplace right now is that the holding companies are distracted
Yeah.
by holding company stuff that has little to nothing to do positively with their clients.
Yeah.
The indies aren't distracted about that.
Right. Right.
So as a result, there are more and more the holding companies are creating opportunities for indies
Yeah.
by not being focused on
I agree.
their
Yeah.
clients, their customers,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so if it's not like it's the age of the indie, it's more like it is an age of indie opportunity. But I really think that's because the holdcos don't seem to care
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
clients. They certainly
Yeah.
don't care below the enterprise level. And so
Right.
here's the
Right.
magic part of this. Most indie agencies aren't well equipped to have a giant enterprise scale scope. They can certainly do work, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but they are for the mid market.
Yeah.
Most clients are in the mid market. They're
Yeah.
not enterprise. And so for most clients, indies are a great opportunity. And for the indies, it's a great time because the holdcos aren't focused on the mid market anymore. They
Yeah.
all want the biggest global clients. Those are
Yeah.
the ones that ring the bell, that get the big news alerts, that where they look down their nose at the competitive holding company because they stole the business. All of that nonsense, right?
Yeah.
Which has
Yeah.
nothing to do with most marketers,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so I think there's a great opportunity here, and there is we're seeing a lot of holdco veterans showing up at indies, adding talent and depth to groups that are already were
Yeah.
talented and had good capabilities. So it'll be interesting to see it all play out. I think I don't think there's I think it'll be very hard for indies to compete for enterprise scale scopes, not enterprise business, because
Yeah.
most big enterprises have a bunch of indies on their roster somewhere.
Hmm.
in addition to but the big scopes
Yeah.
are over in Holdco land. I think in the
Yeah.
indie world also, there's especially an opportunity compared to the Holdcos on the creative side.
Yeah.
And that's because the Holdcos really are focused on the media operation right now
Right. Right. Because that's where the
because that's
margins
how
are.
they're
Yeah.
making their money, right?
Yeah. 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 No, that's so interesting. And I made the move from Holdco to independent at one point, and people were surprised. And I said, well, I was tired of trying to turn the battleship. I wanted to be
Hmm.
on a speedboat because there is the reality is you can be more nimble. You can bring in more partners. You can be more creative with your media strategy or testing into new things because you there's less
Hmm.
bureaucracy. So and I think there's with the holdcos, there's so much more overhead. I remember it was like the global company overhead, then like the sub brand overhead, then the sub brand
Hmm.
overhead, and I think too that gives an opportunity for the independent agencies as well. And speaking of pricing and cost, another thing is it seems like, and I've seen this on both sides, that it's often what we used to call a race to the bottom when it comes to fees and pricing. And how often do clients go through this whole process of picking, like you said, the research, they fit our needs, they have what it takes, but then choose the agency that's giving them the lowest price. And what do you think that is,
Yeah,
and what does that
I
look
can't
like?
really speak for the whole industry because
Yeah, yeah,
we manage the reviews we manage, and
yeah.
by and large in the reviews we manage, we try to set things up so that the client gets to choose the agency they feel will
Hmm.
do the best work and they're most comfortable with.
Yeah,
And our philosophy is we'll make the money work,
yeah, yeah.
which
Agreed. Yeah.
which may involve a fair amount of arm twisting, but we'll make the money work, and it's the partnership that should happen, that
Hmm.
naturally should happen. We pride ourselves on that. Now, at the enterprise scale, there is something interesting going on in that the holdcos have brought enough non-transparent practices to the party that it's hard often these days for a client that's in a review to really know what they're getting for what money, because it's
Hmm.
just not clear, because whether it's the relationship between like a big data contract and the agency work, where margins in the data contract are can be extraordinary and can be offsetting
Hmm.
what seems like more competitive rates in the creative contract, or if
Yeah,
it's principal buying,
yeah.
where there's a lack of transparency into how much money the
Hmm.
agency's actually making on media.
Right.
Because what they're just for those folks out there that aren't familiar with principal buying, what happens is instead of the agency being the agent and acting in the best interest of their client, what they're doing is they're
Hmm.
actually buying media from big publishers, big networks, and reselling it to their clients
Hmm.
in ways where you can't really see the cost of each spot, et cetera.
Right.
Right, and
And they
so
might be buying it at a discount through negotiations, but then reselling it kind of market rate. But
yeah,
the
and
margins are, yeah,
it's pretty clear. Anyone you talk to that's familiar with what's going on in principal buying will tell you that the major holdco media operations are making a really significant margin on
yeah,
that
yeah.
media investment, which
Hmm.
calls into question. It's hard not to call into question, therefore, when that media agency recommends that media. Are they recommending because it's the best thing for my business, or
Right.
if it's the best thing for their business?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
of course, the holdcos will all day long scream about how they are doing what
Yeah.
they can for the client's business. But I
I
guess
think
my
it's
answer is,
somewhere,
if that was true,
yeah,
why don't you just make it transparent,
yeah, yeah.
right? I
And
mean,
I think it
if
falls somewhere in the middle,
well,
right? Like there's
things
some, yeah,
we don't
yeah,
hide things
right,
that we're
right.
full of pride about.
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
True.
It's human nature. The things that we don't tell other people are things that we're embarrassed by.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you,
Well,
you know,
yeah. Yeah. It's so, but what happens then, to your point, is that they can undercut the fees, whether it's like, we're going in at a percentage of all media or whatever the comparable rates are, they can undercut
mhm.
the independents or other agencies to the point where they aren't it makes it then it gives the brands a difficult choice
Very
of, do I
difficult.
go
So,
with the
so,
lower cost?
so a story I heard a few weeks ago.
Hmm.
So we've got big independent media agency battling with a big holdco media agency for a large piece of business.
Yeah.
Fabulous independent agency does not win the business. They hear from people they know on the client
Hmm.
side that they were pitching that the deal that the client went with included a significant amount of principal buying. It included um, no fees for that for the entire media operation. So
I believe
zero
it. Yeah.
fees.
Hmm.
Um,
Yep.
it included a trip to Cannes for the client team,
Hmm.
and it included a free Super Bowl spot. And so anyone sitting and looking at that offer is going to have to pay attention,
Yeah.
but they should also be paying attention to what the heck they just bought,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Because I don't know what that stuff is that I just got for media. I don't know that it's best for me, and frankly, I don't. I think I, as a client, I'm pushing the boundaries on whether I am doing the right, being the right fiduciary for my company.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
Because I got the
It's
trip to
yeah.
Cannes, I got the free Super Bowl spot. I
I
look
got the
like I
glory.
got no fees. I look like the
Hmm.
greatest buyer in history,
Yep. Yep.
but the media itself could be partially crap,
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we won't know. So it's that part is very troubling, but it's
Yeah.
mostly an enterprise scale issue.
Yeah. I think the other challenge that I've seen happen there is then the agency can't staff properly
Mhm.
at the low rate that they brought the client in at. And then 2, 3 years later, nobody's happy.
Right.
So hence the race to the bottom. But Steve, this has been amazing. I love tapping into all of your knowledge and expertise. And so for the people listening that are on the agency side or the brand side, that you're looking for agencies, thinking about like, what do agencies need to do to get those at bats? Like what are the biggest opportunities ahead?
Well, I think they have to start. Touched on this a little earlier. I think they have to start acting like brands, which
Yeah.
requires an
Yeah.
entire
Mhm.
plan that where they're well positioned,
Mhm.
including a sound frame of reference. They have got a prospect friendly website. They have a marketing plan that gets the name out there in ways where
Yeah.
somebody's going to pay attention.
Mhm.
So it's not
Mhm.
all me, me, me. It's
Yeah.
content that's
How
really
I help
helpful
you.
helpful
Mhm.
to the target audience, and then pick the right tactics that make sense for the agency, whatever that is. For some agencies, it does make sense to have a blog and a podcast and to go to the right conferences and have the right speaking engagements, but you can't do everything.
Right. Right.
What I would suggest though is that within the channels that you choose, you're going to need a fair amount of frequency. So if you have
Mhm.
a blog that you do once a month, stop. You're wasting your time. Nobody
Yep.
pays attention to a monthly blog. If you have a podcast that you do once a month, yeah, I'm sorry, it's not going to get enough
Yep.
listener repetition to matter. So, so,
Mhm.
so take a look at what the industry is doing, find out what best practices are, and make your bets based on your resources.
Yeah.
Use the
Yeah.
resources to get the maximum impact, but all of this has to flow from your agency's positioning. So
Yeah.
think every day of the week, from the time you get up at night in the morning to the time you go to bed at night, think about how does my agency become the best version of ourselves the way Edelman became the best version of their selves.
Yeah.
They position themselves brilliantly. They have this amazing cornerstone content. That content ends up in cobblestones everywhere. And it's a flywheel effect on their business where no PR agency in the world gets as much inbound as they do.
Yeah, I believe it. Well, thank you, Steve, so much. So how do people get in touch with you?
So yeah, we're happy to talk to anybody about anything. So the Mercer Island Group website is migroup.com. Easy to find us. My personal web email address is steveb@migroup.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. I'll be sure to put that in the show notes, but
Thanks.
could have talked to you all day on a lot of my favorite topics. So thank you so much. And I hope we can have you on again soon.
I'd be delighted to do that. And you asked great questions, which made it very easy.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Revenue Boost, a marketing podcast. If today's episode gave you something to think about or act on, don't forget to follow the show and leave a review. Sharing these insights help other agency and marketing leaders accelerate their growth too. And if you're ready to get serious about revenue strategy and aligning your brand to win more business, head over to revenuebasedmarketing.com for more frameworks, expert guidance, and tools to help you scale. Until next time, keep boosting that revenue. We'll see you soon.